Her morning fog was slowly dissipating over the coast, revealing the smooth surface of the ocean. I sat on my veranda, sipping my coffee, watching the sunlight cut through the grey haze. The house creaked like an old dog getting comfortable before bedtime. These sounds have long been a part of my life, as integral as the sound of the surf and the cries of shellfish. I am 73 years old and for the past 8 years I have lived alone. My Eleanor passed away after 48 years of marriage quietly and honorably as she did everything in her life. Lung cancer took her in 3 months. I remembered the way she looked at me in her last days. No fear, only regret that she was leaving me alone. Cornelius, she used to say, don't let the children feel the void. Feel it yourself. At that time, I didn't understand what she meant. I do now. Our little house in Marysville wasn't luxurious. Just 2 bedrooms, a living room overlooking the ocean, a small kitchen, and a porch that wrapped around the house on 3 sides. We bought it 18 years before we retired, spending almost all of our savings on a down payment. Then we paid the mortgage for years, denying ourselves many things. I continued to work in my bakery even after I could retire. Eleanor worked part-time sewing. We dreamed of growing old in this house, waking up to the sound of the surf and falling asleep, listening to the lullaby of the ocean. A dream only half realized. After Eleanor died, the children, Marilyn and Garrett, offered to sell the house. It is too big for you alone, Daddy. You need something closer to town. You can't handle taking care of it. And then, almost in a whisper, you could get good money for it now while the market is up. He said, no. The house had become my anchor, the one constant in a world that had suddenly lost all color. Here. Every corner had memories of her. It was where she was closest. Gradually, the children's visits became less and less frequent. Garrett, my son, worked as an accountant for a construction company 2 hours away. He was busy with his career and his 3 children. Marilyn lived even farther away, 3 hours away. She worked as a travel agent, though I doubted she really worked. Her ex-husband paid generous alimony. Her grandchildren had grown up without really knowing me. They would come for Christmas or Thanksgiving, look at the clock, and wait to leave. It became an obligatory but inconvenient program item for them. Yes, we need to visit Grandpa Cornelius. No, not for more than an hour. We still have things to do. I once thought that old age would be different, that the house would be filled with the laughter of grandchildren, that Eleanor and I would sit on the porch holding hands and watching our heritage play on the birds. What I got instead was loneliness and infrequent phone calls that grew shorter and shorter. I shifted my gaze to the birds. The tide was receding, exposing the wet sand and leaving tiny puddles that reflected the sky. If I could, I would have retreated to, out of bitterness, out of the realization that I had become a burden to my own children. But where would I retreat to? This house is my last frontier. Her phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. I took my time answering. Calls rarely brought good news. Finally, after the 5th ring, I picked up the phone. Daddy. Marine's voice sounded unnaturally cheerful. How are you? Alive, he answered, watching a shellgull dive toward the water. What happened? Why happened? I just wanted to see how you were. Marilyn, you haven't called in 2 months. The last time you called was when you needed money to fix your car. Pause. I could almost see her biting her lip, a gesture inherited from her mother. Okay, Dad. I do have news. Good news. I am getting married. That was unexpected. After her divorce 8 years ago, Marilyn swore she would never marry again. Congratulations, he said, not knowing what else to say. Who is the lucky guy? His name is Van Hatch. He is an investment consultant. We met on a cruise 8 months ago. I remembered that she did mention some cruise that her ex-husband had paid for as part of the divorce settlement. One last gift from that bastard was how she put it. 8 months wasn't too soon for a wedding. She sighed. Dad, I am 42 years old. I know what I want. Van is a wonderful man. Smart, caring, successful. And obviously rich, I thought, but kept silent. I am happy for you, Marilyn. When is the wedding? A month from today. We want a small ceremony. And that is another reason I called. Van and I were thinking, maybe we could have the wedding at your place on the beach in front of the house. It would be so romantic. I blinked in surprise. Marilyn had only come here 4 times in the 8 years since Eleanor's death, and each visit had been filled with complaints of backwatch and boredom. Meh? I thought you always said you hated Marysville. I never said I hated it. She was indignant. It is a little quiet for me, but for a wedding, it is perfect. Quiet, beautiful, private. Something in her voice made me worry. Too much enthusiasm for someone who they spent the last few years avoiding this place at all costs. You will have to organize it yourself, he said. I can't help with the preparations. Oh, don't worry. I have a wedding planner. You won't have to do anything. Just be there and maybe give a read speech. I felt the knot in my stomach tighten. Something is not right here. Of course, I'll be there. It is your wedding. Great. She sounded overjoyed. We'll be there next weekend to talk it over. I want you to meet Van. I'll be waiting. There was a pause and I thought the conversation was over when she suddenly asked, Daddy, I've been meaning to ask you for a long time. Have you made a will yet? Her question hit me like a slap in the face. We haven't talked about a will since Eleanor died. Why would you want to know? It is just you're not getting any younger, Dad. And after you fell last year. I slipped on a wet floor, Marilyn. It happens to everybody. Of course it does. I am just worried. We all worry. Garrett asked too. So they were discussing it amongst themselves. They were discussing my death and what would be left behind. Have your hush been drawn up? He answered briefly. It is all taken care of. Oh, good. Her relief was almost palpable. And what about the house? Have you decided how gets it? It all makes sense now. A wedding on the beach. Sudden interest in my well-being. Questions about the will. The house will go to whoever takes care of it, he answered evasively. Well, you know, I've always loved this house, her voice turned honey. All my best memories are connected with it. Remember when my mom and I used to collect shell shells? I didn't remember Marilyn ever collecting shell shells with Eleanor. She always preferred shopping malls to the beach. He said. There is a lot to talk about. Of course, Dad. We'll talk about it all this weekend. I am so excited. You're going to love Van, I am sure. After the call, I sat looking at the ocean for a long time. Thoughts swirled in my head like shellbush over the water. I wasn't naive. I knew my children were waiting for an inheritance. But to plan a wedding here just to ferret out information about the will, that was a new level of cynicism. The house had been hard work for Eleanor and me. Every dollar invested in it was earned by hours at the stove in my bakery. Every scone and every pie. Eleanor saved money from her sewing, denying herself new clothes and trips. We had invested not only money but dreams in this house. And now Marilyn thought she could just come and take it away. I got up and made my way into the house, into the small study that used to be Eleanor's sewing room. I opened a desk drawer and pulled out a folder of papers. My will was simple. Her house and bakery were to be sold after my death, and the money divided equally between Marilyn and Garrett. I always thought that was fair, but now I wasn't so sure. I returned to the veranda with a cup of fresh coffee. Her ocean was calm. Only a slight ripple disturbed its surface. At times like this, I missed Eleanor especially. She would know what to do. She always saw through people, even her own children. They grew up selfish, Cornelius, she would say sometimes. We did too much for them, gave them too much. Maybe she was right. Maybe he was too soft on them. Letting them take without giving anything in return. The next morning, he called Gerrit. He answered after the third ring, his voice sounding out of breath. Dad, is something wrong? Always the same reaction. Like he could only call with bad news. Marine's getting married, he said. Oh, yeah. She was talking. Some kind of financial advisor. An investment advisor, he corrected. Have you met him? Not yet. She says he is great. She wants to have the wedding here on the belts. A pause. He could hear the TV playing in the background in Marysville. That is weird. She always said she hated that place. Then he wasn't wrong. She was asking about the will, about the house. Another pause longer than the last. Well, it is only natural, Dad. She is just a planning for the future. My future or her own. Gerrit sighed. Look, you know Marilyn, she has always been a little straightforward. Don't they take it personally? Do you know anything about this Wangi? Not much. Seems like he had some problems with his previous business. But Marilyn says he is doing well now. Business problems. That would explain Marine's sudden interest in my house. A house buy at sea could be worth a lot of money, especially if sold to the right buyer. They're coming this weekend. He said it would be nice if you came too. This weekend? I can't. Dad. Jason has a soccer game and Leo has a dance competition. Jason and Leo are his oldest. The youngest, Austin, should be about 10. What about the next one? He should check the calendar. You know, there is so much to do right now, but I'll try. Really? He knew he wasn't coming. Gerrit always tried, but he rarely had the time. Alright, son. Let me know if you can. After talking, he decided to take a walk on the belts. The day was clear, the sun reflecting off the water in millions of glints. He walked slowly, leaning on my cane. Ever since he slept in the bathtub last winter, mine had been bothering me in the cold weather. The belts was deserted with only a couple of dogs running around at the water's edge on their owners, a young couple sitting on the sand holding hands. Looking at them, I remembered myself and Eleanor. We too had once shot like that, dreaming of a future that seemed endless. Her future ended faster than we thought. He stopped and looked at my house from a distance. It looked small and vulnerable against the ocean. The blue paint on the walls was a little faded. The porch was in need of repair. But Theome, it was beautiful. It was the home Eleanor and I had created, our sanctuary, our beacon. And now Marilyn wanted to take it away. Use her wedding as an excuse to get information about the will. Maybe even hoped they give them the house as a wedding present. The wind picked up, bringing with it the smell of salt and seaweed. I turned back toward the house, feeling a weight descend on my shoulders. I had a decision to make, and that decision could change my relationship with my children forever. But maybe that relationship had been in need of a change for a long time. I spent the next few days preparing for a visit from Marilyn and her fiancé. I cleaned the house even though I knew she would still find something to pick on. Bought groceries, including that wine she loved. Even trimmed the hedge around the house, though Miney protested every move. Friday night, about an hour before they were supposed to arrive, her phone rang. It was Marilyn. Dad, we're running a little late. We'll be there tomorrow morning. Van got held up at work. Of course, he said, trying to hide my disappointment. I'll be expecting you tomorrow. And Daddy. Her voice got quieter. I am so glad you agreed to the wedding at the house. It means so much to me. He felt a prick of conscience. Maybe he was wrong. Maybe she really did cherish the house and the memories associated with it. It is your home too, Marilyn. He said it always had been. Thank you, Dad. I'll see you tomorrow. He hung up the phone and looked at the table set at the bottle of wine that would now wait until tomorrow. A strange feeling of desolation swept over me. He was ready for the battle that was postponed for the day. He decided to take a walk before going to bed. The night was warm. The stars reflected in the ocean, giving the illusion of infinity. He walked along the water's edge, letting the waves wash over my bare feet. What would you do, Eleanor? He mentally asked. Of course, there was no answer. Just the sound of the surf and the cries of the nightbirds. But he knew my wife. She would protect what we had created together. She wouldn't let the children manipulate her. Stand your ground, Cornelius. It was like she was telling me, you deserve respect. They arrived around 11 óra in the morning. He heard the noise of the engine and stepped out onto the porch. A shiny black car, too expensive for a travel agent, stopped in front of the house. Marilyn got out first, wearing sunglasses and a scarf around her neck, even though the day was warm. She was followed by a man about 45, tall and trim with impeccable hair and a suit that probably cost more than he made in a month at my bakery. Daddy. Marilyn hugged me, leaving a trail of expensive perfume. It is so good to see you. It is good to see you, too, dear. He replied, hugging her back. You look good. This is Van, she turned to her companion. Van, this is my father, Cornelius. Van had stepped forward and shook my hand. His handshake was firm, but his eyes remained cold. Pleased to finally meet you, Sheer, I said with a smile that didn't affect his eyes. Marilyn Hush told me so much about you. He doubted it, but smiled back. Please come into the house. You must be tired from the road. We stepped inside and he noticed Van looking around the room with an appraising gaze. Not like a guest visiting someone's home for the first time, but like an appraiser calculating the value. Beautiful view, I said, looking out the panoramic window at the ocean. A place like this must be worth a fortune. He wasn't wrong. They didn't come for the wedding. They came for the house. For the next 3 weeks, my quiet house became the epicenter of chaos. Marilyn, excited about the idea of a Beat's wedding, hired a wedding planner, a young woman named Tabitha Woods, who ran around the house with a clipboard in hand and was constantly on the phone. She would show up early in the morning and leave late at night, leaving behind fabric swatches, floral arrangements, and endless lists. In the early days, he tried to participate in the preparations. After all, it was my home, and it seemed natural for me to be part of the process. But it soon became clear that no one was interested in my opinion. Dad, please. Marilyn rolled her eyes when he suggested using the old lanterns that Eleanor and I hung on the veranda for special occasions. This isn't a rustic celebration. We want elegance. Van rarely showed up, citing important business meetings. When he did show up, he spent most of his time on the phone or at his laptop, ostensibly managing his investments remotely. He noticed that he never talked about specific clients or projects, only about great opportunities and promising deals. Cornelius, he said one day when we were sitting on the veranda and Marilyn was busy with Tabitha, have you ever thought about investing? He sipped my coffee, hiding a smile. At my age, Van, the only thing worth investing in is a good night's sleep and regular meals. He laughed a little too loudly. You underestimate yourself. With the right strategy, even a small amount of money can turn into a fortune. Like what? Well, there are some promising startups in the technology sector. One of my clients invested 2,000 last year and now his stock is worth triple that. He nodded, pretending to be impressed. And how many of your clients lost money? His smile twitched. Investing always involves risk, of course, but with my experience. Garrett mentioned that you had some problems with your previous business. Now the smile is completely gone. A little misunderstanding with the partners. Nothing serious. Of course. He smiled and stood up. IRL go see if the girls need my help. He could feel his gaze drilling into my back. I hadn't expected that the old man might not be as naive as I seemed. Marilyn untabit ha shut at the kitchen table surrounded by fabric swatches and pictures of floral arrangements. Daddy. Marilyn didn't even look up. Could you please stay out of the way? We're discussing important details. This is my house, Marilyn, he reminded her. And my kitchen. Yes, of course, she said. We just need Theo Focus. He sighed and walked out into the backyard. A group of workers were setting up a large white tent on the lawn leading Theo to the beach. Others were arranging rows of white chairs, aligning them with almost military precision. Hello. He approached them and how appeared Theo be in charge of the process. I am Cornelius, the owner of the house. Jeb Pryor, the man shook my hand. We'll set up the tent tonight and we'll do the lighting tomorrow. Everything has Theo be ready 3 days before the wedding. You seem to know what you're doing. This is my 237 th wedding. I smiled. He hardly noticed brides anymore. He left. Jeb was a pleasant conversationalist and for the next hour we talked about all sorts of things. The weather, fishing, the best breakfast places in Marysville. I was the first person in days Theo actually talked to me, not just tolerate my presence. Pro. Tabitha's voice interrupted our conversation. Miss Driscoll is looking for you. Duty calls. He shrugged and walked toward the house. Marilyn was waiting for me in the living room, tapping her foot impatiently. Dad, we need to discuss the guest list. How do you want to invite? Her question caught me off guard. I didn't think I'd be allowed to invite my own guests. Well, there are a few old friends. Walter and Grace Nashville. They live a couple miles from here. Joseph Barkley, my partner in the bakery, and his wife. Maybe Edith Howard. She was your mother's best friend. Marilyn wrote down names, but with each one, her face grew more and more tense. Daddy, it is all old people. I am 73, Marilyn. Most of my friends are about my age. I understand, but she bit her lip. We want the wedding to be energetic, young, and you don't want a bunch of old people ruining the picture. That is not what he meant. But her eyes said otherwise. All right, he said, standing up. Don't invite any of my friends. After all, it is your wedding. Dad, please don't take offense. It is just that space is limited and your friends are more important than mine. I get it, Marilyn. I left her room feeling invisible in my own home. It was becoming a familiar feeling. The next day, Garrett arrived with his wife, Lina, and youngest son, Austin. Her older kids stayed home. Jason had an important soccer game and Leah had rehearsal. You look good, Dad, Garrett said, hugging me. How is Tenny? It is cracky, but it is holding up, he answered, surprised that I remembered my injury. Austin, a 10-year-old boy with perpetually disheveled hair, barely said hello and went straight to his clipboard. Austin, Lina, touched his shoulder. Say hello to your grandpa normally. He, Grandpa. I mumbled, not taking his eyes off the screen. He, grandson. He pat him on the head. Do you want to go to the beach later? I am a level down, Austin. Lina looked embarrassed. It is okay, he said. At his age, he wasn't a burning to spend time with old people either. We went into the house where Marilyn immediately engaged Lina in a discussion of wedding plans. Garrett and I went out on the veranda with a bottle of beer for him and a glass of whiskey for me. How are things going at work? He asked. Normal. The usual routine. How is your bakery? Joseph is doing okay. He stopped by once a week to check the books and talk to your customers. We were quiet for a while looking out at the ocean. Garrett took a big sip of beer. What do you think of one? I finally asked. What am I supposed to think? Marilyn is happy. That is not an answer, Dad. He sighed. I think is not way how says is, only think wants my house. Gary choked on his beer. What? What makes you think that? Is looking at the house as an investment. Asked about the value of the lot and Marilyn asked about the will. She is just worried about you. Get it, don't they? I wasn't born yesterday. Looked away. Okay, maybe she is a little pragmatic, but she is your daughter and she really loves this house. She has been here 4 times in 8 years, get it? Each time she complained about the boredom and the mosquitoes. People change or their circumstances change. We were silent again. I finished my whiskey and set the glass down. I changed my will, he said finally. Gerrit froze with the butter to his lips. How the house will be sold and the money will go to a fund for talented bakers. The bakery, too. It was a lie, but he wanted to see his reaction. It didn't take long. What? Dad, you can't do this. It is a family inheritance. An inheritance that none of you were interested in until you smelled the money. It is not fair. We were always loved this house. So much so that you couldn't find time to visit me. He lowered his head. We have our own lives, Dad. Work, kids. I know, Andy don't blame you, but let us not pretend that you dreamed of living in this house. You want to sell it, especially Marilyn. She said she and Van might move in here. He left. Van in Marysville. Hammond wouldn't live here a week without his expensive restaurants and boutiques. Gerrit was silent, but he could see in his eyes that he agreed with me. Will you tell her? He finally asked. About the will? No. And don't you tell her either. She'll be furious. She'll be furious anyway. In the evening, everyone gathered around the big table in the garden. Van had returned from his business trip and was now entertaining everyone with stories of his success in the world of finance. Marilyn looked at him with adoration, occasionally touching his arm or adjusting his collar. And then he said to him, James, if you don't invest now, you will regret it in a year. And guess what? The stock went up 200%. Van left, expecting everyone to join in. Impressive, Gerrit said. But he could see the skepticism in his eyes. What do you do, Gerrit? Van asked, clearly not remembering that my son had already told me about his job an hour ago. I am an accountant for a construction company. Oh, an accountant. It is a rewarding profession. It is kind of boring, isn't it? Lina tensed, but Gerrit only smiled. Sometimes, but stable. Stability is good, Van agreed. But his voice sounded condescending. In my business though, risk is part of the game. What exactly are you investing in? Van, he asked. Stocks, real estate, a little bit of everything. Diversification is the key to success. Sure. And are your clients mostly individuals or companies? I hesitated for a second. Mostly high-end net worth private investors, people who understand the value of making the right investments. Interesting. Where is your office located? I have a virtual office. Nowadays, physical location is not so important. Dad, Marilyn intervened. Stop interrogating Van. This isn't a job interview. Just wondering about my future son-in-law's business. He smiled. Nothing bad. After dinner, everyone went to their rooms. Marilyn and Van took the guest bedroom, and Gerrit and his family were in the living room on the pull-out couch on their mattress. I lay in my bed, listening to the sound of the waves outside the window and thinking about how strange life was. I dozed off, but woke up around midnight to the sound of voices. Someone was talking on the veranda. Carefully trying not to creak the floorboards. I went to the window and listened. Just saying. We need to be careful. It was Van's voice. The old man isn't as simple as he looks. Hi, just a lonely, grumpy old man, Marilyn replied. Don't they make it more complicated than it is? Hi, asks so many questions about my business. Hi, has always been like that. Hi likes to poke his nose into things. What if Hi checks up on me? Find that old sack case. Marilyn laughed. Dad barely knows how Theo se a computer. Hi won't check up on anything. I hope not, because if the wedding doesn't go through, it won't. Everything is going according to your plan. We get married. I inherit the house. We sell it. And we pay off your debts. Simple. I felt the blood drain from my face. So, here is the deal. Vanish in debt and they're planning on using my house to pay it off. What if Hi changes his will? Van asked. Hi won't. Hi always said the house would go to me and Gerrit isn't interested in it. Hi lives too far away. What if Hi lives another 10 years? We can't wait that long. There was a pause. He held my breath, waiting for my doctorish answer. Listen, Marilyn finally said, we could offer him the chance to move in with us after the wedding. We'll tell him we're worried about his health, that Hi shouldn't live alone in such a big house. Hi'll agree. Hi always amendable to emotional manipulation. And then we find a good nursing home, something decent enough so we don't feel too guilty. Sell the house and pay off your debts. What about the bakery? We'll sell that, too. It is not worth much, but it is in a good location. Could bring in about 200,000. I leaned against the wall, feeling weak in my legs. My own daughter was planning to send me to a nursing home and sell everything I created in my life, and she was talking about it as coldly as if she were discussing buying a new car. And Gerrit, Wayan asked, would I go for it? Garrett is too busy with his perfect family to get involved. Besides, Hi has a good job. Hi doesn't need the money like we do. How much could the house be worth? You said about 790,000 last appraisal. Maybe even more if you get it right. Ocean view, private baths, 2 acres of land. Some realtors were talking 850. That is enough to cover most of the debt and start over. It is all going to work out. Just be nice to daddy before the wedding. I am trying, but Hi is looking at me like Hi can see right through me. Don't be paranoid. Hi is just a lonely old man who is happy to have any company, even if Hi suspects something. What can Hi do? They fell silent, and soon he heard the sound of the door closing. They had gone back into the house. He cautiously went back to bed, but sleep wouldn't come. Their words rolled around in my head, each one like a stabbing knife. Emotional manipulation. Nursing home. 790,000 staring at the ceiling and thought about Eleanor. What would she say when she heard our daughter say these things? How does she plan to get rid of me if we were an unwanted thing? Eleanor had always been stricter with her children. Don't they spoil them, Cornelius? She used to say, they must know the value of money, the value of labor. But it wouldn't resist their requests. Always gave them what they wanted. New toys, fancy clothes, money for college for their first car, for a down payment on an apartment. And this is how they repaid me. Plans to put me in a nursing home to take over what Eleanor and I had built with our hard work. I got up at dawn feeling older than my years. Every joint tugged. Every step was difficult. I made coffee and walked out onto the veranda, watching the first rays of sunlight paint the ocean pink. What should I do? Confront them. Cancel the wedding. Change the will. All options seemed painful. I'll let Theo break with my family, the only thing he had left after Eleanor's death. But did he have a real family? Were these people we how saw me only as a source of inheritance of family? Ellerius Theo C. True love requires no proof and my children did all have time, money, time, attention, and now they were demanding my house, my bakery, my life. He finished my coffee and made my decision. Gerrit and his family left after breakfast, citing Austin's school commitments. Marilyn stayed behind. Theo continued wedding preparations. Daddy, she said at lunch when Van was absent again for business reasons. He wanted Theo talk to you about something. Yes, darling. Van and I were thinking, maybe after you get married, you should move in with Uesh. This house is too big for one person, and we're worried about you. He almost left. Exactly like the scenario he overheard last night. That's very thoughtful of you, he said, acting touched. But I love this house. I feel your mother's presence here. I understand, but you're 73, Dad. You live alone, away from the city. What if you fall again? What if you get sick at night? I have a cell phone and the neighbors check on me every day. Still, it is not like living with a family. He looked her in the eye. Where will your house be, Marilyn? Van was talking about San Francisco. She blushed slightly. We haven't decided yet. Maybe somewhere closer to you. Marysville. He didn't hide my skepticism. Maybe. Or a neighboring town. That is very nice of you. He pat her hand. But let us get back to this conversation after the wedding. You have too much on your plate right now. She looked displeased, but didn't insist. Speaking of the wedding, he continued. I'd like to give you a special gift. Her eyes lit up. Really? What is it? It is a surprise. ELL announced it during the reception. Oh, Daddy, she hugged me. You're at her best. He hugged her back, feeling bitter at the realization that her delight was not due to my concern, but to the expectation of material gain. In the following days, the wedding preparations reached their peak. The house was filled with florists, decorators, cooks. Tabitha was everywhere at once, handing out instructions, and checking every detail. Marilyn was getting more and more nervous, picking on everything and constantly changing decisions. He tried to stay out of the way, watching us if from the sidelines. It wasn't my wedding. It wasn't my part. He was just a decoration, a comfortable old man who provided a beautiful venue and would soon provide his home. On the eve of the wedding, Van found me in my office. He was looking through old photographs, Eleanor and the children on the beds, our wedding, the first day at the bakery. Cornelius, I said, standing in the doorway. Me interrupting. Come in, Van. Have a seat. I sat down across from me, squirming awkwardly in his chair. He wanted to thank you for everything you do for us. It means a lot to Marilyn. She is my daughter. I want her to be happy. She will be. I promise. I'll take care of her. I hope so. I was quiet for a moment, obviously choosing his words. Marilyn mentioned that you were preparing some special gift. Well, here is the real reason for the visit. Yes, it is a surprise. Of course, of course. I am just wondering, is it something we should know about in advance for planning purposes, you know? No, it is nothing like that. Just a small gesture from a loving father. Is she? I looked disappointed. Well, thanks again for everything. I stood up, but stopped at the door. You know, Cornelius, I always admired this house. It is such a beautiful place. If you ever decided to sell, I'll let you know first. He smiled. I nodded and walked out. He went back to the photos, stopping at the shot of Eleanor standing on the veranda looking out at the ocean. She was so beautiful, so strong. You were right, love, he thought. I shouldn't have let them feel the void. I should have filled it myself. My daughter Marine's morning began with mild chaos. From hot hour in the morning, the house was filled with people. Florists were arranging the last of the arrangements. Waiters were preparing the marquee for the reception. The photographer was checking the lighting. I watched this hustle and bustle from my bedroom window, keeping a low profile. After all, it was her day. At least that is what she thought. I dressed in the suit I bought especially for the occasion. Dark blue with a vest. Eleanor always said that color suited me. As she tied my tie, I caught my reflection in the mirror. Grey hair, wrinkles around my eyes, slumped shoulders. When did I get so old? And when did my children become such strangers? A knock on the door interrupted my musings. Dad, it was Garrett. Can he come in? Ah, sure. I came in already dressed in his suit, grey with a blue tie. I looked tense. How are you? I asked, sitting down on the edge of the bed. Fine, he replied, tightening my tie. And you? I am fine. Just a lot of people. We didn't talk for a moment. Garrett wanted to say something, but I didn't dare. Spit it out, he said finally. What happened? I sighed. Marilyn said you'd be sitting at table 8 with Aunt Marcia and Uncle Lloyd. He grinned. Aunt Marcia was Eleanor's 87-year-old cousin, nearly deaf and in the early stages of dementia. Uncle Lloyd, her husband, was a little better. A nursing home then. Dad, he tried. Don't worry, Garrett. I don't take offense, but he took offense. This was my home, my land. I paid for most of this wedding and he was relegated to the back corner like an inconvenient piece of furniture. There is something else. Garrett lowered his eyes. She wants you to give a speech during the reception. It is only natural. I am the father of the bride. Yeah, but she wants you to announce your wedding gift publicly. It all makes sense now. Marilyn expected me to announce the transfer of the house. Do it in front of all the guests so it wouldn't back out later. I understand, he said, keeping a neutral expression on my face. Well, I hope she'll be happy with my gift. Garrett looked at me carefully. What are you up to, Dad? It is nothing special. I just want this day to be memorable. I shook his head. Don't do anything dramatic, please. Meh? He acted surprised. When have we ever been dramatic? I smiled, but the worry didn't disappear from his eyes. Just be kind, okay, for family. Family. That word used to mean everything to me. Now, it just sounds like an empty shell. The ceremony was supposed to start at 2 hours in the afternoon. By noon, almost all the guests had arrived, about 80 people, most of whom he had never met. Marine's friends from the travel agency, Vane's business associates, a few distant relatives. He watched Tabitha, the wedding planner, direct the flow of people, telling them where to sit, where to put their gifts, where to take pictures. She avoided me. Apparently, Marilyn had warned her that an old man was best kept out of organizational matters. At 1:30, he headed to the beach where the archway for the ceremony had been set up. Rows of white chairs were lined up in even lines. Rose petals were scattered on the improvised path. The sea was calm, the sky a perfect blue. The weather at least was on Marine's side. Emer, Prao, Tabitha called out to me. You should be in the house. The bride will be ready soon. Of course. He nodded and slowly wandered back inside. There was more madness in the house. Brides in pastel blue dresses were running between rooms carrying stilettos, powder, and champagne. A photographer clicked his camera, trying to capture natural moments that were carefully staged. Marilyn was in her, or rather guest, bedroom, surrounded by stylists and makeup artists. When he knocked, one of her girlfriends opened the door. Oh, Emer, Prao, Marilyn is almost ready. Wait downstairs, please. The door closed before he could say anything. Downstairs, he ran into Van, who looked unusually pale in his black suit. I was nervously adjusting his cufflinks. Cornelius. I tried to smile, but it came out strained. Big day, huh? The biggest, he agreed. Nervous me? No, of course not. It is just a lot going on. Nervous about a big investment. HF Rose, trying to figure out if it was just an unfortunate pun or a hint. What do you mean? Marriage is the most important investment in life. I pat him on the shoulder. More rewarding than any stock if you invest sincerely. Oh yeah, of course it is. I hope you have enough capital, Van. With that, he walked away, leaving him confused. At 2 óra, the guests were seated. He stood at the door of the house, waiting for Marilyn to come down to walk her down the aisle. My legs were sore from standing, but he didn't complain. Finally, she showed up. He had to hand it to her. She looked gorgeous. White dress with lace, her hair arranged in an elegant style, light makeup that emphasized her eyes so much like Elinor. For a moment, he saw in her the little girlie had once racked on my lap. Daddy, she smiled, but there was weariness in her eyes. How do we look? Beautiful, darling. Your mom would be proud of you. A shadow ran across her face, either at the mention of her mother or at the thought that Eleanor would have seen through her intentions. Thank you. She took my arm. You ready? Always. We went out onto the veranda. The musicians began to play the wedding march. The guests had risen. Van was waiting at the altar, his face contorted at the sight of his bride, perhaps at the thought of the house that would soon be his. He slowly led Marilyn down the aisle, each step difficult, partly because of my knee, partly because of the weight on my heart. When we got there, the pastor, an older man who seemed to have been hired through an agency, uttered the standard phrase, "Who gives this woman to be married to this man?" He looked at Marilyn, then at Van. For a moment, he wanted to say, "No one. Turn around and take my daughter away to save her from this marriage of convenience, from this man who saw her only as a means to get to my property." But she made her choice, and she had to live with the consequences. "Meh," he said, and stepped back. The ceremony was short and impersonal. The pastor read the standard words about love and fidelity, which sounded particularly ironic in the context of what he knew. Marilyn and Van exchanged vows that he was sure neither of them intended to fulfill. Rings were put on, a kiss was exchanged, and the pastor pronounced them husband and wife. The guests applauded. He clapped too, mechanically and without enthusiasm. After the ceremony, everyone moved to a large tent set up on the lawn. The tables were decorated with flowers and candles. The bar was stocked with all kinds of alcohol and a jazz quartet was playing in the corner. Everything was elegant and expensive. As Garrett had predicted, he was seated at table number 7 in the far corner of the tent. He was accompanied by Aunt Marcia, Uncle Lloyd, an elderly couple they never met before, and a single woman in her 60s who introduced herself as Caroline Elliott, Marine's colleague. "You must be very proud of your daughter," Caroline said as we sat waiting for dinner to be served. "Of course I am," he replied automatically. "Such a beautiful house you have on the grounds. How long have you lived here?" 18 years. My wife Andy bought it before he retired. "Oh, he heard about your loss. I am sorry for your loss." He nodded, not wanting to get into the subject with a stranger. "Marilyn said you might move in with them after the wedding." Caroline continued. "That is so nice of them." He almost choked on my wine. "She said that?" "Yes. She mentioned that you're becoming, you're having trouble running the house on your own." So Marilyn was already spreading the story about my supposed incapacity, preparing the ground. "Interesting," he said, trying to remain calm. "And what else was she telling?" "Well, that you've been forgetful lately. That you get confused sometimes. Normal age-related problems. Nothing to worry about." It once had my fists under the table. My own daughter was spreading rumors about my dementia to justify her plans to put me in a nursing home. Dinner passed in a tense atmosphere. He barely touched her food, although it must have been excellent judging by the rave reviews at the other tables. I watched a hot table where Marilyn and Van sat surrounded by bridesmaids and friends of the groom. They were laughing, drinking champagne, looking happy. A perfect couple, a perfect deception. After dessert, the toast began. First, the best man spoke. Somebody of Vanesh from Wall Street how talked about their friendship and how lucky this gave us to find such a beautiful woman. Then the maid of honor, she showered Marilyn with compliments and wished her newlyweds and happiness with special emphasis on the former. Finally, Tabitha took the microphone and announced, and now the floor to the father of the bride, Emmer, Cornelius Prow. There was silence. All heads turned toward my table. He slowly stood up, leaning on my cane, and walked toward the small stage where the microphone stood. Each step was difficult, but not because of the pain in my knee. It was because of what he was about to do. He took the microphone and looked around the room. Dozens of faces looked at me with polite expectation. At the head table, Marilyn looked tense, her smile strained. Van was frankly nervous, tapping his fingers on the table. Good evening, he began. For those how don't know, I am Cornelius Prow, father of the bride. Polite applause. When a child is born, parents dream of its future. Eleanor and I dreamed that our children would grow up to be kind, honest, hardworking, that they would value family and care for each other. He paused, sipped water from the glass that stood next to the microphone. Marilyn had always been a special girl, determined, knowing what she wanted. Those qualities had helped her in life, in her career. Marilyn smiled, clearly flattered. She didn't realize what he was getting at today. She had found someone who shared her ambitions. Van. He nodded toward the groom. A man who knows exactly what he wants and how to get it. Van smiled nervously, clearly sensing a catch. The newlyweds have asked Matteo announced a wedding gift he prepared for them. They were expecting something special, and they won't be disappointed. All eyes were now on me. Marilyn leaned forward, her eyes shining with anticipation. My gift is a lesson. A lesson about values, about what is truly important in life. The smile began to fade from Marina's face. You see, I recently learned that my children consider me a burden, an old man who must be gotten rid of in order to take possession of his property. A whisper ran through the room. Gerrit, sitting at the table next to the newlyweds, turned pale. I learned that my daughter and her new husband planned to put me in a nursing home to sell my house and pay off vanished debts. Now the whispering had turned into a rumble. Marilyn jumped up, her face contorted with rage. Daddy, what are you talking about? Truth, dear. Haven't you and Van were discussing on my veranda 2 nights ago about how my house is worth $8,000,000, how I succumb to emotional manipulation about how you find a decent enough nursing home so you don't feel too guilty. Van jumped up next to Marilyn. That is a lie, I shouted. Cornelius, you don't know what you're saying. I know perfectly well, and I have a good memory despite the rumors about my forgetfulness that my daughter spreads among her friends. He turned to the guests, many of whom looked shocked. So, my wedding gift, he announced that my house is not for sale, that I am not moving in with the newlyweds, that I am not going into a nursing home, and that this wedding is the last event to be held on my land. Marilyn rushed toward the stage, her face red with anger and embarrassment. Dad, stop it. You're embarrassing me in front of everyone. You embarrassed yourself, Marilyn, with your plans, with your greed. You're out of your mind. She turned to the guests. Don't listen to him. He is suffering from dementia. Their facts will confirm it. Their facts will how? He asked. He didn't see any their facts. You don't remember? She screamed. You don't remember anything. Van walked toward her, trying to lead her away from the scene. Marilyn, calm down. People are watching. He don't take care. She pushed him away and turned back to me. Dad, you're ruining the most important day of my life. No, Marilyn, I am saving the rest of my life from your plans. Gerrit got up from his seat and walked toward the stage. Dad, I said quietly. Will you please stop? Let's talk somewhere else. No, Gerrit, everyone needs to know the truth about how your sister planned to use this marriage to take over my estate. Marilyn made a sound like a growl. You old vicious liar. Van, tell him. But Van suddenly became very quiet. He stared at the floor, avoiding the gaze of the guests. Van. Marilyn grabbed his arm. Tell everyone he is lying. Marilyn. Van spoke very quietly. Let us get out of here. No, I am not going to let him ruin our wedding. He put the microphone back on the stand. The wedding has already happened, Marilyn. Your husband and wife. Congratulations. But the reception is over, and I want every one of my property immediately. The guests began to rise awkwardly from their seats. No one knew how to react to this situation. Some just wanted to get away from the scandal. Others looked as intrigued as a reality show audience. Marilyn grabbed the microphone. No one is going anywhere. This is my wedding and it will go on. But it was too late. People were already reaching for the exit, avoiding looking at the bride. This is all because of you. Marilyn turned to me, her eyes full of hatred. You always ruin everything. Always thinking about yourself. I am thinking about the house your mother and I spent years building. About the bakery I built with my own hands. About the life you wanted to take from me. This was supposed to be our inheritance. She screamed. All right. Inheritance comes after this, Marilyn. Not before. She threw the microphone on the floor. Get out of here. Get out of my wedding. He looked at her sadly. This is my house, Marilyn. You can't kick me out of my own home. Then I am leaving. She turned to the remaining guests. The party continues at the Ocean View Hotel. Everyone is invited. No one moved from their seats. The guests looked embarrassed and awkward. Marilyn let out a cry of frustration and rushed toward the exit of the tent. Van followed her, casting me a look of anger and fear. Fear? Yes, I was afraid. Afraid that his plans were ruined, that his debts would go unpaid, that his deception would be exposed. Gerrit came up to me as she was coming down from the stage. Did you really have to do that? I asked, his voice full of reproach. Yes, he answered firmly. I had to. She'll never forgive you. I know. We stood in the nearly empty tent, watching the last of the guests leave in a hurry. Lina came up to us, holding Austin's hand. We should probably go, too, she said quietly. The kids are tired. Gerrit nodded. You go. I'll catch up. When she was gone, I turned to me. I didn't know about their plans, Dad. I swear. I believe you. And I really did. Gerrit was weak, but not evil. What is going to happen now? I shrugged my shoulders. Life goes on. At least mine did. Marilyn never told me about the nursing home. I wouldn't have agreed to it. Maybe you would, but you wouldn't have stopped her. He lowered his head, acknowledging my point. I am sorry, Dad. Me too, son. Me too. He hugged me awkwardly and walked toward the exit. I was left alone in the tent amidst half-eaten cakes and half-drunk champagne. A strange feeling of desolation and relief came over me at the same time. I walked slowly toward the house, leaning on my cane. The beach was empty with only the waves lapping at the shore. The sky was beginning to darken. The sunset would soon color the ocean red and gold. Eleanor loved sunsets. Marilyn stood on the porch, already changed into her traveling suit. Her eyes were red from the arch, but her gaze was hard. I'll come get my things in a week, she said as she approached. Until then, I don't want to see you. Whatever you say. You ruined my wedding, humiliated me in front of all my friends, in front of Viane's family. You planned Theo put me in a nursing home so you could sell my house. What is worse? That is not true. You got it all wrong. You're old. You're crazy. Don't they go on, Marilyn? He heard your conversation word for word. She was silent. Her anger replaced by something akin to shame, but only for a moment. Even so, you shouldn't have flaunted it. You could have talked to me alone. And you would have denied it. You would have convinced Gary that he was out of my mind. You would have continued your plan. You're not my father anymore, she said quietly, but with icy fury. You're dead to me today. Her words hit me like a physical blow. Despite everything he knew about her intentions, to hear it from my own child was unbearably painful. If that is the case, he died a lot sooner, he replied. The moment you began to see me only as a source of inheritance, she turned and walked to the car where one was waiting. Didn't he look back, didn't he say goodbye, just walked out of my life like she'd turned a page. He watched their car pull away, taking my daughter and her husband away from the house they were so eager to get their hands on. Part of me wanted to run after them, to apologize, to put things back the way they were, but the other part knew that the way things were was an illusion, that our relationship had long ago become a farce. The morning after the wedding, he woke up with a heavy head and an even heavier heart. Sunlight streamed through the curtains, drawing patterns on the wooden floor of the bedroom. The world outside continued to exist as if nothing had happened. Waves crashing against the shore, shells shrieking, the wind rustling the leaves. But my private world was upside down. He brewed some coffee and went out onto the veranda. Her tent still stood on the lawn, a pathetic reminder of yesterday's scandal. Workers were supposed to come in today to dismantle it, but for now the area looked like a battlefield after a battle. Overturned chairs, abandoned glasses, crumpled napkins. You're not my father anymore. Marine's words echoed in my head. He knew he'd done the right thing by exposing their plans, but the grief of losing my daughter didn't make it any less acute. He foreran, snapping me out of my musings. He hesitated before answering it. It was probably Garrett. Or maybe it was Marilyn herself, ready to unleash her wrath on me. Hello. He finally spoke. Cornelius, it is Walter. Walter Nashville, my old friend and neighbor who lives a mile and a half down the coast from me. One of the few friends Marilyn didn't invite to the wedding. Walter, he was relieved. Good morning. He heard about yesterday's incident. It is all Marysville is talking about. He sighed. News travels fast. Grace's niece was at the wedding. She was a waitress. Told us all about it in great detail. So, what is the word in town? It varies. Some people think what you did was cruel. Others say you did the right thing to protect yourself. Personally, I am on your side. He smiled. Walter was always a straightforward man. Thanks, buddy. That is not the only reason I am calling. Grace went to the supermarket this morning and saw your brother-in-law there. Ex-son-in-law, I guess. Anyway, I was asking about lawyers. Particularly interested in those who specialize in declaring incapacity. I am tense. So, they didn't back down. They just changed tactics. Thanks for the warning, Walter. Be careful, Cornelius. These two are obviously up to something. He shot for a long time after that conversation, thinking about the situation. The declaration of incapacity was a serious matter. If they could convince the court that he was incapable of making decisions for myself, they could gain control of all my assets. I wasn't naive. I am 73 years old. I had the usual age-related problems. Sometimes forgetting where I put my case, sometimes getting my names mixed up, but I was sane, fully aware of my actions and their consequences. I needed protection. I picked up the phone book and started looking for lawyers. There weren't many in Marysville, but I found a name I vaguely remembered, Alton Casey. I had helped my bakery partner, Joseph, with probate a few years ago. Monday morning, Olton Casey called and offered Theo meet at his office in downtown Marysville at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. He agreed and spent the remaining time before the meeting gathering documents that might be needed, property certificates, financial statements, medical records. Olton's office was located in a small brick building on Main Street. Olton himself was younger than he expected, barely in his 40s, with shrewd eyes behind stylish glasses. Proud, I shook my hand. Pleased Theo meet you, though the circumstances are not the most pleasant. Call me Cornelius, he said, sitting down in the chair across from his desk. Olton, I nodded. So tell me what happened. He described the whole situation, Marilyn and Vanessa's plans for my house, my exposing them at the wedding, Walter's warning that they were looking for a way to declare me incompetent. Olton listened intently, making notes in his notebook. He understand, I said when he finished. It is an unpleasant situation, but it is not hopeless. They need some serious evidence to declare you incompetent. You don't have any diagnosis related to mental health or dementia. I had my last physical 3 months ago, all normal for my age. That is good. Did you bring the paperwork? He handed him a folder of papers. I took a quick look through them, nodding occasionally. Finances are fine. Payments are regular. The house is fully paid for. Everything looks stable. No judge will see any signs of incapacity here. So, I have nothing to worry about. I won't say that. Incapacity suits can be very subjective. And you were already mentioned that your daughter is spreading the word about your alleged forgetfulness. We need to be prepared. 3 days later, he received an official letter from the San Francisco law firm of Bronson, Whitley and Associates. They notified me that they were representing Marilyn and Van in the case to have me declared incapacitated based on testimony from family members and medical professionals about the progressive deterioration of my cognitive condition. They filed a petition with the court. The hearing was set for July 20th. He immediately called Olton. I was not surprised. We were expecting this. Now we need to move faster. On his advice, he underwent a full neuropsychological examination with Dr. Raymond Ellis. The tests were tedious, hours of questions, assignments, puzzles, but the results, according to the doctor, were excellent for someone your age. Joseph, my bakery partner, was shocked to learn of Marina's actions. He never thought she was capable of such a thing, I said, sitting at a table on my veranda. He remembered her coming into the bakery as a little girl asking for cupcakes with frosting. People change, he replied. Not always for the better. I'll write up a certificate of competency for you. And I'll ask our regulars to do the same. They've all known you for years. The neighbors backed me up, too. Walter and Grace, Edith Howard, even the Mayaman, Benjamin, all wrote letters attesting to my clarity of mind. He called Gary to get his position. I sounded tense. Dad, this has gone too far. I said, you and Marilyn are destroying the family. He didn't file a lawsuit to have my daughter declared incompetent. I know, but what you did at the wedding. I was protecting myself, Garrett. You could have just talked to her alone. You didn't have to make a scene in front of everyone. Do you believe she would have listened? That she wouldn't have convinced you of my dementia? I didn't say a word. Where will you be in court, Garrett? On my side or your sister's side? I don't want to pick a side, Dad. His voice sounded exhausted. I just want this to be over. Why don't you just compromise? Give Marilyn part of the house or promise that she'll get it after, after I am dead. Is that what you're all waiting for? No, don't say that. I don't want this feud. I don't want to choose between my father and my sister. Sometimes neutrality is a choice, Garrett, and rarely the right one. He hung up the phone with a heavy heart. My son wouldn't openly support Marilyn, but I wouldn't oppose her either. How wanted Theo sit on the sidelines, avoid conflict, as I always did. July 20 came sooner than expected. Olten came Theo pick me up early in the morning. Theo take me Theo to Snohomish County Courthouse. He put on my best suit and took my cane, not because he really needed it that day, but because it made me look solid. The courthouse was housed in a stately sandstone building. Olten and I were seated in courtroom 3, waiting for the hearing to begin. Marilyn and Van entered with their attorney, a tall woman with grey hair gathered in a tight bundle. Margaret Bronson, he assumed. They sat on the opposite side of the hall, not looking in our direction. Garrett appeared last, alone, and after a moment's hesitation, sat down in the middle of the hall, neither with us nor with them. Judge Alvin Parker, a man about my age, began the hearing by explaining the procedure. Margaret Bronson spoke first, introducing me as an elderly man suffering from progressive cognitive decline and paranoia about family members. She then called the first witness, Dr. Francis Phelps, whom he had never seen in my life. I claimed Theo have examined me in April and diagnosed the early stages of dementia. Olten brilliantly exposed his lie by presenting evidence that he was at a Bakeresh conference in Portland on the day in question. Phelps confused his testimony and was discredited by the judge. Marilyn on the witness stand described my forgetfulness and paranoia, but could give no specific examples other than the incident at the wedding. When it was our turn, Olten presented their Alice's report confirming my full capacity. I then read testimony from neighbors, bakery customers, and my attending physician, Dr. Green. Your Honor, Olten concluded, Mr. Prow is a perfectly capable elderly gentleman who wants nothing more than to live peacefully in the home he has earned through honest work. This lawsuit is nothing more than an attempt by his children to gain control of his property. It took the judge only 10 minutes to reach a decision. Having considered all of the evidence presented, he denied the petition to declare Mr. Cornelius Prow incompetent. All medical evidence indicates that he is fully aware of his actions and their consequences. Moreover, he finds it troubling that the petitioners attempted to present false medical reports to the court. Marilyn sobbed quietly, and Van put his arm around her shoulders, casting hateful glances at me. Case dismissed. Head judge bent his gavel. Olten and he walked out of the courtroom. He was relieved but not happy. I won the case but I lost my family. Are you alright? Olten asked as we walked down the courthouse steps. I'll be fine, he replied. It just takes time. Garrett caught up with us in the hallway. Dad, I began uncertainly. He was going to say, there is no need, Garrett, he interrupted him. You made your choice. Or rather, you didn't. It is not fair. He was trying to remain neutral. There is no neutral in the war between truth and lies, son. He just wanted the family to stay intact. Her family stopped being whole a long time ago. He just didn't want to admit it. He turned to leave, but Garrett grabbed my arm. Don't do this, Dad. Don't push us all away. He looked him in the eye. I am not pushing anyone away. I just stopped letting myself be used. What about the grandkids? Don't you want to see them? Of course I do, but on my terms. Not as an ATM grandfather or a potential inheritance, but as a man who is respected. He walked out of the courthouse feeling a strange mixture of victory and defeat. He had kept my home, my independence, my dignity, but he had lost my family. And despite all their flaws, it was the only family he had. On the way home, he looked out the car window at the scenery passing by and thought about how strange life is. We make plans, start families, dream of the future, and then we find ourselves alone with the ruins of those plans and the ghosts of those dreams. But maybe that is the point. Theo find the strength to start over again and again, Theo make new plans, Theo create a new life. My house greeted me with silence. Familiar but especially profound today. He walked to the veranda and sat in a chair, looking out at the ocean. The waves lapped against the shore, erasing the marks in the sand, just as time erases the marks of our mistakes and disappointments. Eleanor often said, life is not about waiting for the storm to pass. It is about learning to dance in the rain. I wasn't sure he was ready to dance, but he was definitely ready to move on without Marilyn, without Gerrit, without illusions of a family idol. Her phone rang, interrupting my thoughts. It was Alton. Cornelius, I said without preamble. We won, but this may be just a beginning. I recommend that you change your will to protect your assets. I'll think about it, he replied. Thanks for everything, Alton. When he hung up the phone, I realized he had already made my decision. My life would no longer revolve around my children and their expectations. I would live for myself and perhaps for Eleanor's memory. I raised my eyes to the sky, watching the sun slowly sink toward the horizon, coloring the clouds pink and gold. It had been a year since the day I stood in the courtroom, defending my right to live on my own. A year of change, reinvention, and newfound freedom. I am 74 years old, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alive. Early fall colored the trees around my Marysville cabin in gold and copper tones. I sat on the veranda with a cup of morning coffee, watching the sunlight play on the surface of the ocean. The cool breeze brought the smell of salt and seaweed. Soon it would be time to leave, but I savored every minute I spent here in the place that had been my refuge for so many years. After the trial, a lot of things changed. The first thing I decided was that the bakery was demanding too much of my time and energy. I didn't want to sell it. It was a part of me, my brainchild. Instead, I offered Joseph, my partner of many years, to lease the business. I happily agreed. Now we had a steady monthly income without worrying about the day-to-day. You have to come at least once a week, Joseph insisted as she signed the contract. Her customers miss your stories. And they did. Usually on Thursdays when the bakery was less crowded, sitting at a table by the window, drinking coffee, talking to the regulars. Some of them became real friends. Freed from everyday worries, he started traveling. At first, it was small trips to neighboring cities, to the coast, then further afield. Portland, Seattle, Vancouver. He stayed in small hotels and guest houses, got to know the locals, tried new food, visited museums and theaters. In January, he traveled to Europe for the first time in many years. 2 weeks in Italy, Rome, Florence, Venice. Eleanor had always dreamed of visiting there. We had planned this trip for our golden wedding anniversary, but didn't make it in time. I took her picture with me and mentally showed her all these amazing places. When he got home, he realized he didn't want to live in the past anymore. My house was full of memories, good and bad, but they were all pulling me back to a life that no longer existed. He needed to move on. He started attending the Marysville Community Center, which hosted a variety of activities for seniors, from yoga classes to cooking classes. There he met a group of like-minded people who, like me, believed that age was no reason to stop living life to the fullest. Abigail Woodward, a 72-year-old widow, taught art and convinced me to try painting. You have a wonderful sense of color, Cornelius, she said as she watched my first clumsy attempts at painting the ocean. You just need practice. Harlan Kingsley, a former literature professor, organized a book club where we discussed classics and contemporary works. Thanks to him, I discovered authors I never even heard of before. Octavia Patton, an energetic 78-year-old woman with bright red hair, which, as she admitted, had not been her natural color for many years, led a group of travelers. Life is too short to sit still, she said, planning another trip, and too long to spend it with unpleasant people. Marilyn didn't try to contact me after the trial. I heard from Gerrit that she and Van had moved to Portland, where I was trying to start a new business. Apparently, without my house and money, their financial situation wasn't as rosy as they had hoped. Gerrit called once a month, usually on Sundays. Conversations were polite but superficial. I talked about the kids, about work, about the weather, everything but the main thing. We both knew there was a gulf between us that could not be bridged by mere words. In March, when the ocean was particularly rough, and the wind howled through the cracks of the old house, an unexpected phone call came. Daddy. Marine's voice sounded uncertain. Itesme. Hello, Marilyn, he answered, trying to stay calm. I haven't heard from you in a long time. Yes, a long time. She was silent as if she didn't know what to say next. How are you? I am good. How about you? How is Van? Very good. Van started a new business. He consults for startups. Good for you. Pause again. I could hear her breathing into the phone, gathering her thoughts. Dad, I am calling because I wanted to apologize for what happened last year, for the trial, for everything. I shot back in my chair, surprised by her words. Apologizing was the last thing he expected to hear from Marilyn. What made you change your mind? He asked. Is istammered. He did a lot of thinking. Andy realized he was wrong. We were wrong about what we were planning to do. It was awful. He was silent, waiting for her to continue. There was something in her voice that made me doubt the sincerity of those words. I hope you can forgive me, she continued. Maybe we could start over. He could come visit. We could talk. And then he realized Garrett must have told her about my travels, about how they changed my life. She thought he was drowning in money and she wanted her share. This is very sudden, Marilyn, he said gently. I appreciate your apology, but I think we need some time. Maybe later on. Of course, her voice sounded disappointed. I understand. Just think about it. Okay, I will. After that conversation, he sat for a long time looking out at the raging ocean and thinking about how easily some people can change their position when it suits them. Marilyn hadn't changed. She still only saw me as a source of money. A week later, Garrett called. Did you talk to Marilyn? He asked without preamble. Yeah, she called. She apologized. And what did you tell her? That we needed time. He sighed. Dad, she is really sorry. You both made mistakes. Maybe we should give her a chance. Tell me honestly, Garrett, he decided to be direct. Did she find out about my travels and think he was suddenly rich? Pause. She asked how you were doing. He mentioned Italy and she immediately decided to reconcile. Don't be so cynical, Dad. People change. Yes, they do. Eva changed. Marilyn, I doubt it. Another week later, an official letter from a lawyer showed up in my mailbox. But this time, it wasn't an incapacity suit. It was a notice that one Hedge had filed for bankruptcy and creditors had seized all of his assets, including his joint property, with Marilyn. Now everything fell into place. Marilyn didn't regret the past. She was looking for an escape from financial ruin and he was her last hope. He didn't return her call. Instead, he contacted Alton Casey, my attorney, and set up a meeting. He had a plan that needed to be formalized. Are you sure you want to do this, Cornelius? Alton asked me when he had outlined my intentions. It is a radical step. I am absolutely sure, he replied. It is time to move on for real. At the end of April, he invited Garrett to dinner. He arrived alone without his wife and kids looking tense and unsure. Thanks for meeting me, he said as we sat down at a table at my favorite waterfront restaurant. Sure, Dad, he tried to smile. Are you okay? You look rested. I am. I've made some important decisions, and I wanted to share them with you in person. We ordered our food and when the waiter left, he continued. I am selling the house, Garrett. He froze with his fork in his hand. What? Why? You love that house so much. I did, but now it is too big for me alone, and it is too full of memories, good and bad. So, what do you plan to do? Travel, she'd have word, live life to the fullest, while I have time and health. Where are you going to live when you get back? He bought a small apartment in Seattle. Nothing fancy, but with a nice view of the bay and all the amenities. Gerrit looked at me with surprise and he thought a tinge of admiration. That is unexpected, but great, Dad. It really is. We continued dinner talking about his work, about the kids, about news from the world. It wasn't until dessert arrived that I dared to ask the question he knew had plagued him all evening. What about the money from the sale of the house? He put the spoon down and looked him in the eye. He donate most of it to charity. The Alzheimer's Disease Research Foundation and the Beginning Baker Support Program will get 300,000 each. I turned pale. At the rest will be split between you and Marilyn. 30,000 each. 30,000. His voice trembled. But the house is worth almost 800,000, 790,000 to be exact. The real estate agent is sure we'll find a buyer easily. And you're giving almost all of it to charity? Yes. I think it is the best use of the money. It will help people who really need it. Gerrit looked stunned. He could see different emotions struggling in his eyes. Frustration, anger, disbelief. You're doing this to punish us, I said finally. Me and Marilyn. He shook my head. No, Gerrit. I am doing this to free myself and you, too. For too long, this house has been between us, an object of desire, a cause of strife. Let it serve some good purpose. Marilyn will be furious, I muttered. Perhaps, but it is my decision and it is final. The papers have been signed. We finished our dinner in silence. When it was time to say goodbye, Gerrit hugged me awkwardly. I hope you find what you're looking for, Dad, I said. I already have, son. Freedom. The house sold faster than he expected. A young couple from San Francisco fell in love with the ocean view and offered even more than the asking price. In early June, he handed them the case, took the last of my personal belongings, and left forever the place that had been my home for 18 years. My new apartment in Seattle was modern and comfortable. 17th floor, panoramic windows, minimalist dashing, no cracking floorboards, no leaky faucets, no ghosts of the past. Marilyn, as Gerrit had predicted, was furious. She left several angry messages on my answering machine accusing me of being cruel and heartless. He didn't take call back. Our conversation was over many months ago on the courthouse steps. Instead, he focused on planning my first real adventure around the world through Asia. 160 days across 3 oceans with stops in 26 countries. He had always dreamed of seeing the world. And now that nothing was holding me back, he could finally realize that dream. Harlan and Ostavia from the book club decided to join me. We spent hours discussing the itinerary, planning excursions, reading guidebooks. Ostavia, a former geography teacher, knew amazing facts about every port on our itinerary. Imagine Cornelius, she said, showing me pictures of Santiago in Chile. Here you can see the Andes on one side and the Pacific Ocean on the other. 2 natural wonders in one place. The day of sailing came in late June, a clear, sunny day, perfect for the start of a new journey. He stood on the deck of the huge Truisha ship Odyssey of the Seas, watching Sierra slowly drift away. The harbor cranes, the skyscrapers, the mountains on the horizon. Everything grew smaller, becoming a miniature panorama. Harlan and Ostavia stood beside me, as excited as she was. Theo new adventures, Harlan raised his glass of champagne. Theo new friends, Ostavia added. Theo new life, he finished the toast. We drank, watching the sun sparkle in the water. The open sea and endless possibilities were ahead of us. Old grudges, disappointments, and regrets were behind us. He thought about Eleanor, how she had always supported me, even in the most difficult times. How she believed in me more than he believed in myself. He thought he could almost hear her voice. Go forward, Cornelius. Don't look back. And he didn't look back. Seat disappeared over the horizon and with it my old life. The deck beneath my feet vibrated slightly as the powerful engines drove us farther and farther out to sea. The Odyssey cut smoothly through the waves, heading south to the first stop on our journey, San Francisco. From there, we were to sail to Los Angeles, then Mexico, Central America, through the Panama Canal to the Caribbean. I breathed in a full chest of salty sea air. At 74, I was embarking on the greatest adventure of my life, without the shotsclash of the past, without the weight of obligation, without manipulation from those who should have loved me unconditionally but sold they. Ostavia touched my shoulder. What are you thinking about, Cornelius? About freedom, he answered, smiling. And how late? He realized its value. Better late than never, she winked. Now, let us go explore the ship. I heard there is a great restaurant overlooking the stern. We walked along the deck, three older adventurers, ready for new discoveries. I felt a lightness I hadn't experienced in years. It was as if the heavy weight I had been carrying all my life had finally fallen from my shoulders. The house by the sea, which had once been the center of my existence, now seemed like a distant memory. So did the pain of betraying my children, as did the loneliness I had so long considered my destiny. Now I had a new destiny, and I was ready to meet it with an open heart and a clear mind. The ship was picking up speed, leaving the shores of America behind. Ahead lay a whole world full of wonder and opportunity. Andy, Cornelius Brow, a 74-year-old widower and former baker from Marysville, was ready to explore every corner of it. Because it is never too late to start living for real.